This is your City Council Roundup, a recap of what's happening at City Hall with John Ongaro. The views expressed in this program are solely of those of the host and not necessarily those of the radio station or its partners.
You know, when I sit through these meetings on Monday nights, it's to do a couple of things. Unlike what one counselor suggested a few years ago, this is not for entertainment purposes or to gain listeners and make money. It's quite the opposite. If you think I sit through these meetings for entertainment, I can assure you there are a lot more things on my list that I consider entertaining. This is certainly not one of them. The purpose of this roundup is to bring your attention to things that are happening, quite frankly, right under your nose, that you know nothing about, that have impact on your day-to-day life. Moreover, it's to hold our elected officials accountable for their decisions, period. Now, the city does its own review each week, complete with sponsored posts on Facebook, which, by the way, means your tax dollars are used to give Facebook money to promote their videos. Yes, that does happen. And their report from inside the city walls are not going to address the kind of chaos and embarrassment that was last night's meeting. So let me be clear. If I had a choice to not sit through last night's disaster, I wouldn't have. To be frank, stopping the roundup now seems like a bad idea, and it would be a disservice to you. And because of what happened last night, these are things you need to hear about, to talk about, and to share on social media without taxpayers' dollars to help you, so that you understand exactly what happens the night before. And what happened last night, you need to pay attention to. Because if it doesn't make you question just about everything, nothing will. I've been asked countless times why we don't have more counselors on this show, and more often, more proponents to causes or supporters of causes on this show regularly. Well, simply put, it's not a show where I'm interested in getting into debate or discussion with them. They have their own soapboxes to stand on, and they have their own means to do that. We're taking away some pretty good music right now during this, and I'm certain that your drive to work would probably be better served with music than propaganda from them. So you do have a choice to tune into your counselor's behavior on Monday nights, online or on TV. You need to start doing that. They have that platform, and frankly, last night they used it pretty well for some of them to make complete fools of themselves. And with that, they certainly did not disappoint last night. So let's get into it. A couple of quick hits first before we get to the big item, the parking item, which of course will make you cringe when you find out the details of what went on last night. First, what a night for the new city manager, John Cullen, to be in attendance. Mr. Cullen, after sitting through that meeting last night, if you change your mind about being here and working with this group, I wouldn't blame you for a second. Welcome to our city, sir. For God's sake, save this council from itself. Second, the Waverly Park Fountain is back on the agenda. The Friends of Waverly Park did an exceptional deputation last night, saying what we already know. The fountain at that park has been there for over 130 years and has been completely neglected. It's been passed over on countless budgets, and there are no plans in the next 3 years to save this historic asset. Essentially, your councillors had more important things to do. Insert a soccer turf comment here. And the group is asking for reconsideration to have it restored in the next budget. It's back to administration for a report in December to see the feasibility and the cost of it all. Again, repairing a historic artifact. It's a staple in our city that park and the fact that such a historic, monumental piece of our city's history has been so poorly treated should tell you a lot about previous councils. Let's see if this one gets it right. You already know the answer to that. Councillor Atrini last night asked if we've looked at other areas to put the fountain. Apparently, she missed the presentation part that it was gifted to the city 130 years ago with the intent that it stays there. Councillor Chung suggested that last night that the sale of parkettes that was brought forward a couple of weeks ago could fund the fountain repair. Now, that's a great idea. The motion referred to administration, the reporting back in December. Finally, for the quick hits, the Tennis Center recommendations to council to make it a municipal capital facility. What that simply means is the partnership with the city continues, and the Tennis Center is relieved of things like school taxes that will ultimately help their operations. It was passed. But let's think for a second here. $1.5 million from the city to build an indoor facility for tennis. They went and raised the rest of the money by themselves. What a fine example of hard work and partnerships that are not one-sided. They got it done on their own money, their own partnerships, and they did it with only $1.5 million from the city for a $4 million facility. Now imagine for a second if another organization did the same thing when they said they could do it for $17 million, but instead cost us $52. The tennis club, their volunteers and members could hold a clinic on patience and doing things right. If only others paid attention. Congratulations to everybody involved in this new facility. Good for you. You are an example of forward thinking, perseverance, and grace to get things done. And you did it.
Wow. Well, I don't think you're done yet.
I'm just getting started.
Okay. All right. I did want to mention something, but
Go
I
ahead.
don't know if maybe you have it coming up.
Now it's good
well,
time.
I observed a little bit, and there was a point, as our incoming city manager is coming in, John Collin.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a point where
he sat with his hand on his head?
Yes, and I had mentioned, I said
I don't blame him
to
if
my
he
wife,
changes his mind.
I'm wondering, did he say, what the heck is going on here?
Well, wait.
Okay.
This is where it gets good. So
All
let's
right.
get into the hottest topic in town. Here we go, parking. Thunder Bay's biggest pet peeve since the beginning of time. We as residents have a high level of entitlement with parking. We always have. If you're not 15 seconds from the door, it's too far. It's cold in the winter, and we have to walk and on and on and on. I get it. But we're completely spoiled. Plain and simple. I don't need to give you the full story. June 1st changed everyone's lives for the worst in the entire city, and the whole city is upside down over it. Or are they? Good heavens, we have to pay to park at the marina. I can tell you that I was there all day Friday and Saturday, and the park was just as busy as it always is. The marina was the hottest topic to your councilors when the bylaw was passed by a majority a few months ago to implement new parking plans for the entire city. It's what your councilors focused on. Are you paying attention? But last night, you would think the June 1st implementation of parking restrictions and fees happened by some kind of immaculate conception and that they had no idea that there would be fallout from parking everywhere else in town. How embarrassing this was to watch. 3 deputations came forward to basically ask for a change. The Waterfront BIA and the Chamber of Commerce both did an amazing job of explaining the issue about 1-hour minimums. They asked council to change the 1 hour, $2 minimum to allow for short-term parking to pick up a coffee or grab some food or a quick gift. More than a fair ask. But let's be clear about something. It's an ask almost 3 weeks after the fact that wasn't brought up in the nearly 1-year process to get us here. But they asked, and for valid reasons. And so I'll get to the spoiler part now. Councillor approved it, allowing meters to accept payment for 15 and 30 minutes and be done with it. Sounds simple, right? Well, of course not, because one by one, councillors spoke up against not only the 1 hour minimum, but the times and days of paid parking. That's right. The 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Saturday structure was all of a sudden a surprise to them. Yet they voted for it. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Let's call out a few of those exchanges that, in a word, were beyond embarrassing. Councillor Atrini, who got on TV a few times to say the same thing as she did last night, quote, "We missed it." You sure did, Councillor, and you voted for it. She went on to suggest we change the times for Saturday parking. Then while we're at it, it's not that big of a deal. Let's change that too. No, Councillor, that's not how it works. You approved the bylaw already. To change the bylaw requires a notice of motion that requires 2/3 majority. I know that, and so should you. Councillor Agarwal asked, the 7 a.m. start time, how did we get there? Well, Councillor, your council approved that start time 3 times. And if you would like to change the bylaw, requires a notice of motion that requires 2/3 majority. I know that, and so should you. The second most embarrassing point came from Councillor Cicino, who suggested publicly that we're spending $13 million to upgrade Red River Road, and because of this parking decision, there's going to be no restaurants left when it's all done. Councillor, it's your ward. Might I suggest getting off the couch and trying to make a reservation down there on a Friday or Saturday night? That $13 million you approved that you now question, and the parking plan that you approved and now question for your own ward didn't happen miraculously. It happened by a decision of your team. Mocking either decision, even in jest or just to suggest that businesses will fail over either of them, is shameful. Shame on you. And if you would like to change the bylaw, requires a notice of motion that requires 2/3 majority. I know that, and so should you. But the highlight of the night, the moment that not only summed up the stupidity of the entire discussion of this council last night, is the most perfect proof that these elected officials are absolutely not paying attention. At the same time, last night brought us what I think was the highlight of Norm Gale's 8 years as city manager. It was this. Councillor Aiello, who gained a lot of extra points with me suggesting the turf facility was too expensive and we should reconsider it, not only gave back all of his points last night, but after last night owes me a few. Councillor Aiello, obviously rattled by the surprise about a year-long process for parking that he was a part of and that his colleagues in the room approved 3 times, had the nerve to suggest that he didn't have all of the information. He said that they can't make right decisions if they don't have all of the information, suggesting there were parts of the parking plan that he didn't know anything about, suggesting and even accusing administration that they didn't provide all of the information. Please understand this. They did have all of the information. Every single word of it, every piece of it, every detail delivered to them weekly for over a year. And he said, we can't make the right decisions if we don't have all of the information. City Manager Norm Gale responded with this confidently, and I quote, "You did get all of the information, full stop." What a wake-up call that was. Manager Gale said countless times and said again countless times last night, trying to drill it into these councillors' heads that they do what council decides, what council directs them and follows them to do. So if a majority of councillors voted for all of the details and now all of a sudden has issues with them, it simply says one very, very important thing clearly. You're absolutely not reading the information given to you. You're not reading reports. You don't care enough to read the details on the very things you vote for. And because of that, a handful of you last night were in a complete and utter embarrassment to yourselves, to your colleagues, and to the community you represent. One by one, a handful of councillors spoke up against a parking plan that's 3 weeks old, that has been followed by citizens who pay to park, proving that they put their hand up when they shouldn't have, that they agreed to something they didn't understand. That, if that doesn't raise a question, what will? What else did you vote for that you haven't had a clue about? What a frightening thought. I've got 52 million other decisions for you to think about that you probably didn't put enough thought into. It has caused the similar outrage. That's 100% on you. I can go on and on with quotes and tell you about the biased chair last night who allows some to speak freely and jumps all over others when they do, especially ones that don't agree with him. And to quote the mayor from last night, check the tape, he said that when being challenged by the chair that he asked 3 questions already and he was out of order, while others were allowed to pontificate about how we missed this over and over again. The entire meeting last night was a lesson in a couple of things. There are people in that room making decisions that have no clue what they're voting for. They proved it last night. Check the tape. There was an obvious divide between some members of council that is not only disruptive, but distracting. One will say the sky is blue and the other will argue that it's probably green. The continuous berating of administration for decisions that council has in fact made on their own is embarrassing. You won't ever catch administration in an error. Get over yourselves. They do what you tell them to do. Sadly, most of the time, actually you have no clue what you're directing them to do, and you proved that last night with parking. But most importantly, here's something we can all learn from last night. There are things happening every Monday night that are decided by a group of people that you voted for that might surprise you, upset you, or excite you at the same time. But you're not hearing about it until it makes the news the next day. But let me be clear. Nothing is happening without these 13 people putting their hand up. For them to act surprised as they did last night absolutely showed who's in it for the right reasons and who's doing their homework. For them to suggest they didn't know or missed it when it came to parking, to me, shows their integrity. In just the last month, the city has turned upside down because of things that are a surprise to the public when they're pushed through by your councilor. Your councilors approve everything. The $17 million suggestion from a self-centered special interest group turned into $52 million. They approved it, and you were outraged. A sweeping change to parking at the marina, parking times and paid times, was voted on every step of the way 3 weeks into it, and the citizens are outraged. But your councilors voted for it 3 times. And businesses are thankful today that they changed their mind for the better and allowed 15-minute parking, even though they had a year to suggest it. There's a small win. Too bad they had to embarrass themselves for not doing their homework to make it happen. Councilors, last night was proof. You have lost your way. Your personal attacks on each other are childish and embarrassing. Your snide remarks and attempted shots at administration are ridiculous and make you look foolish. The biased chair and the countless reminders from the city manager that you did this, these are your decisions on multiple topics, made the entire meeting a complete embarrassment. What a welcoming for the new city manager. And to be frank and honest with you, I didn't think this group could get any worse, but they proved me wrong again last night. The hope is lost that they will get it together, that they'll actually read their notes and do their homework and work together. You've got 2 more years of this, and I promise you this is only the beginning. If you think last night got bad, just wait till you see what's coming. What's coming will make this look amateur hour. Watch this space. Counselors, you had all of the information. You blew it a few times in one night. Full stop.
Whoa. I need a breather, John?
Outrageous.
That was intense. That was
absolutely
intense.
Outrageous.
Okay. I don't know.
Now, both you and Candy watched that meeting last night, and your heads were spinning. I watched part of it.
I was confused.
Because they were confused.
All right.
It was just a lesson in who reads the homework. You get paid $30-something thousand, not a lot of money, for a lot of extra work, but you're handed a package every week to read what's coming on Monday night. And 3 weeks after a decision was made 3 months ago to put parking in, you say we missed it? Mm-hmm. You sure did. But what else have you missed?
Yeah. The other side of this as well is, as intense as that was, and a lot of very interesting information in there, the question is, so this 15-minute and 30-minute
yeah, it's
parking,
still there. Use the meter.
Like any time? Like
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
They haven't a clue.
All right.
July will be the next meeting about parking.
Right.
And in order to change any of it, it needs a notice of motion. That means they have to rescind a bylaw. That's not easy to do. So now all of a sudden, after it's been passed 3 times, you're going to say, we change our mind.
You know what I find very interesting? This has really, since the 1st of June, has taken up a lot of time. And you think about it, and I get it. I get there is frustration out there. But when you think of the scope of everything going on in this city, parking is one of the big subjects.
But there's a part of that you're missing. It's revenue.
It's revenue.
We don't have any revenue. Councillor Hamilton said it last night.
Yep.
We don't have any other revenue. Let's take the revenue from parking. Yeah. We should be paying for parking.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
Spoiled rotten.
Yep.
You can agree or disagree with the 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., whatever. You can debate all of that. But you elect officials to make those decisions, and if you're against it, they're not listening to you.
I know we're pressed for time, so we got to get into news, but I do want to comment on that individual, a resident in downtown, who had no notes, first of all, but said that he has to pay. He parks downtown, that's where he lives, but pays from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, and then 14 hours on Saturday.
Yeah.
And you do the math, it's almost $80 a week he's been paying.
In the wintertime,
can't
can't park on the street, has to park in the parkade. The only response I have to that is you chose to live there.
Yeah. All right.
Right? And ask the 200,000 people that live in downtown Toronto where they park.
That's the other part of it too, for sure. Yeah.
We're not Toronto, I get it, but we're really spoiled when it comes to parking.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, John. I appreciate it. And again, you will find this complete roundup on our website. You will find it on our Facebook page. We can also text the word council to 807-344-8229, our T-Bay Teletalk and text line, and you will be good to go, and it'll be there. All right?
It's time to start paying attention.
All right, thanks, John.